Sometimes I despair the world will never see another age of enlightenment. Now it's time for the Fort Mac Philosopher Show.
So, welcome to the Fort Mac Philosopher Show. I'm here with my special guest, Richard Heathen, who's going to talk to us today about Agenda 21. We're actually going to have a discussion about Agenda 21, a bit of a debate, conversation, see where it goes. But Richard, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks out there over to that camera?
All right, well, I'm Richard Heathen. I am the host of Liberty Machine News. I am also working on a documentary on Agenda 21 and the furthering of collectivist philosophy in North America through the tax-exempt foundations and how they are funding collectivist initiatives, collectivism basically, through the education, through political sphere, through activism. All these foundations are specifically through Agenda 21 are pushing basically a collectivist takeover of our society.
Yeah, and so, you know, I wanted to talk to Richard today. I thought it'd be an interesting conversation. Richard and I know each other through Facebook, really. I mean, we just had some mutual friends and we kind of liked each other's work, hooked up on a couple projects, and I've been on his show before, and we had a Skype conversation the other day, and I thought it was a really interesting conversation. We didn't agree on it. You know, we didn't come to the same conclusions, but I thought the conversation was awesome, and I thought, you know, let's pause the conversation, Richard, and do this on camera, because I want to start doing some podcasting, and I think this would be a great conversation to have for a wider audience, because maybe we can talk about how we can discern truth from falsehood, how we can come to conclusions in the world, how we can notice what's going on around us, and focus on things that we should be focusing on. And I thought this was a great subject, and you know, I'd be happy to learn more about Agenda 21. Honestly, I don't know that much about it. So why don't you talk a little bit, tell me a little bit about Agenda 21, and talk a little bit about what you would like to advance in this conversation about Agenda 21.
Well, I think, Agenda 21 was put down into paper at the Earth Rio Summit in 1992. Really was, I think, the culmination of work based on a lot of these elite types through the Club of Rome, specifically Maurice Strong. But ever since 1992, they've been kind of pushing forward with this idea. Now, what Agenda 21 basically is it's a collective. It's pushing collectivism, pushing the idea of the rights of the community, of the group. And it's also about pushing the level of governance, I think, to the global level, using environmentalism and the threat of environmental degradation as a driver for this. I really look at it as a revolution in statism. Now, most anarchists are just, oh, statism is bad, but like I really look at this as Agenda 21 is statism 2.0. Like everywhere I'm going, people I've interviewed, land use planners, people who work for the government, who are talking, who specialize in eminent domain, they're all telling me that things are changing. They're pushing this idea, this nihilistic collectivist idea of limits to growth, not just limits to growth, because, you know, sure, there should be some sort of limits, but limits on the individual and the amount of how much we can consume in society, and that should be regulated by the state. Now, I really think that the problem with a lot of anarchists is they just think, oh, the state is bad, and sure, I will grant you that. I will grant you that inherently it's evil, inherently it's a monopoly of the use of force, but at the same time, not all states are created equal. We enjoy a standard of living here that is unparalleled because of the freedoms we have, the economic freedom specifically. But I think a lot of that is coming under fire in Agenda 21 because they want to use the government to basically create what they say true value. Basically, they want to use the government to mark up the price of things. So, for instance, it's a very small example, and I think the agenda is much more nefarious and bigger. But one small example is parking. They want to start. The one idea I heard was they want to start taxing people who drive cars for the parking their employers provide them, because that'll give them a disincentive to drive, and that'll show the market value, because you should be taxing because it's a benefit from employment, and that's just one small aspect.
Yeah, so there's this comprehensive document, from what I understand, then, and it's got a lot of it's couched as, and it is actually a voluntary document that is being pushed by people with a particular agenda, obviously, that and it's couched in environmental terms by people who want a cleaner earth or whatever. And
I have to stop you there. It's you say it's voluntary. It's what's known as a soft law. Yes, it's they can say it's voluntary, but it's being implemented. It's already been it's pushing agenda. After 1992 in the United States, they created the President's Council on Sustainability, and so that's being implemented through the government this way. In Canada, we have the Federal Sustainable Development Act, where they have a Sustainable Development Advisory Council, which people from government, NGOs, and corporations sit on. So it is being implemented. Into law.
Okay, so let's stop here then, or now that we've kind of introduced it, let's talk a little bit about where we want this conversation to go, what we want to get out of it, what would make us change our minds about our current position. So I think you've hit on maybe where the difference is in our opinion on Agenda 21. You said it was a soft law or something like that.
Soft law, yeah.
So it is. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but to me, a law is something that's backed by a use of force. So
I'll interject here. No, the UN isn't going to invade us if we stop implementing Agenda 21, but it is being implemented through the state.
Right. So, I mean, right. So it's being implemented through the state, and so I guess my position in this is that statism is the root problem. They're the ones that are holding the gun. They're taking this document and they're saying, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's implement it in our community. And of course, it goes down through numerous layers. It goes through, it never is called Agenda 21 by the time it gets down to the municipal government. It might be called something different.
Yeah, it's always some flowery euphemism of a name.
But the ultimate thing is, that's the source document from where it all. Now, your contention, though, I think, from what I understand, is that this is a very deliberate plan to take over with an end goal of domination. If I'm not mistaken,
that is exactly what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. So let me just explain what my position is. My position is that it's just an emergent belief that it's the emergent byproduct of belief in a cleaner environment, with the idea that using force is permissible. So in other words, it's a predictable emergent property of that.
I don't totally disagree with that, but I think there's more to it than that.
Right. So I guess my further to that, I don't think I agree with the idea that there's a particular cabal or a group of people that are. I mean, I think that there's a group of people that can see where this might go, and they can see that we're going to benefit from this. Like a war profiteer sees that the U.S. is starting to march towards war, that they can maybe foment this invasion of a country, and they get behind it and they cheerlead for it, and they're like, yes, we're going to sell lots of bullets. Imagine if they invaded here and here. Maybe we can start developing this kind of weapon and that kind. So the war profiteers all get on board and they cheerlead the state towards war. And I think in the same sense, there's a group of profiteers, if you will, behind Agenda 21 that can get behind this parade and say, okay, yes, environmentalism, this is the new thing we can get behind. And you see all the oil companies getting on board and all this. We'll get on board here, and we can see where the profits are going to be made, and we're going to use the guns of government to get it. So that's kind of where I'm seeing it from.
I think there is a lot of a certain amount of truth to what you're saying, but I think you are missing a small part of the picture, because you have to understand these. First of all, it all started back in the Club of Rome with all these elites. Maurice Strong's one of them. I think Gorbachev was another. They wrote a document.
But before you go on, because you're presenting evidence right now, just so I'm clear what your position is.
My position is that, yes, this is part of a orchestrated plan that's, you know, being funded by the elites to kind of socially engineer society and push it in a particular way. Like I said, I think this is a revolution in statism. Like, statism is bad, and I will grant you that, but this is like statism 2.0.
Okay, but I don't think we have a disagreement yet here. I'm not sure how what you just said is different than what I said.
It's not just because I said I think there is a nefarious conspiracy to bring in a new world order, and I know that sounds cliche and I'm a tinfoil hat guy, but I can provide the evidence to show that these people are moving the world in this direction, and it is for a centralization of government, or moving it, not even centralization so much, because the goal is to weaken the nation state and to bring power up to a global level. Like, I was watching one of the land use planners who's actually pushing this agenda in Florida, but it's called 750 in Florida, right? What they're talking about is they're creating regionalism. They're weakening the nation state, but they're also creating regional governments.
And sorry, who's they?
The people pushing this agenda, the Agenda 21.
Right, but there's people in my community that are environmentalists, right? So would they be part of this cabal, or would they be just unwitting?
You have to understand, not everyone. See, this is another thing people kind of lose the trail on. That's why I agreed with what you said. Yes, this is on the ground. You have the useful idiots, the people who, the true believers, if you will, and you have them in every movement. You're always going to have the true believers. I never said that they didn't exist. What I mean is the people who are pushing this agenda and are in the know. Well, let me continue, because I think this is what a big point of what I wanted to get is basically, yes, this guy, his name is Andres Duaney or something. He's a land use planner pushing 750, which is basically Agenda 21 in Florida. He says, you should just pass this plan and then trust us to do it. You should just pass it numerous times. He also said that they're creating regionalism, weakening the nation state, but also creating, so the levels would be like regional, local, regional, state, federal, and then the UN. Those are the levels of government.
Well, okay, so
it is basically it is taking a lot of decision making and putting them up to the global level, and also put on the regional level, but through unelected bureaucrats and technocrats, because that's how a lot of this stuff is implemented.
Now, can you explain to me how this is different than any other level of government? I mean, ultimately, people who like government are going to push towards a one world government anyways, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of people that would agree that a one world government would probably be a good thing, because now we can manage all the resources, everyone can be on the same page, we can treat the earth the same and all this stuff. Most people, I don't think, would see that as necessarily problematic, unless you have apocalyptic views and Christian views where the beast is coming, but then again, that brings you closer to heaven. So, but I think people just from liberals might say, we need to all coordinate together anyways.
Centralization of authority is wrong. And I just kind of want to get into some of the stuff that I kind of the evidence, if you will, to bring my point.
Okay, so I'm just still trying to wrap my head around your point, because I'm not sure. So I guess what I would look for to change my mind about this being kind of an emergent property of people's beliefs, as opposed to necessarily a nefarious cabal of individuals who are pulling strings. I guess what I would need to see is, I'm not sure what I need to see for evidence. I think I'd need to see, Alex Jones pulls out Bilderberg, he pulls out all these meetings. So I guess
you want to talk about Bilderberg? I'll tell you about Bilderberg. Well, you brought it up, so okay. I want to talk about it, because Bilderberg, it is a voluntary meeting of people and stuff, but you have to understand, the European Union was a brainchild, and I'm not saying first of all, I'm not saying the Bilderberg Group was the only people that worked towards creating the EU, but they did work toward it, and it was a project they were successful with. Like Joseph, I think it was Redinger. He was one of the founding members of the Bilderberg Group. He was also one of the founding members of the European movement. He worked to create the movement to create a unified Europe. Now, for some Bilderberg documents leaked in the 1980s, they go into how they're going to make the EU work. Like, well, how are we going to make this work? What do we need to do to make this successful? It was a think tank brainstorming that. Now we have, this was in the 80s. We have the we have the European Union now. And now I'm not pretending that the Bilderberg Group is the only people that worked on it, but it was a project that they worked on, and it was one they were very successul with. Yeah. So to tell me that the Bilderberg Group doesn't have any power, I think or influence is ignoring reality.
Okay, I guess I certainly wouldn't ignore that. I guess I just don't see the Bilderbergs as that different than any other lobby group, I guess. They certainly have more power and more influential people. They're a higher level of lobby group, but I see that kind of thing at a very local level. Like in my community, you see nonprofits, NGOs getting together with government, getting together with people who have lots of money in the community, trying to make things happen that they believe in, right? And so, if you believe that an economic union is good, that it's going to create stuff, and by the way, it's going to create more opportunity for us as well.
But you have to understand, this isn't just some rich people working through the government. What they did is they created a whole new level of government. They created a whole new level of government. The European Union, that's an actual state. And actually, from my understanding, it creates a good number of the laws in Europe, and they're not in any way accountable. Right. Now, say what you want about liberal democracy. I'm not a fan, but it gives us a lot better life. It has given me a lot better life than those in the third world or in China. I think this is a point I really want to hammer to, like libertarians and the anarcho-capitalists, is not all states are created equal, and this revolution in statism, Agenda 21, is deliberately and openly collectivist in nature, and they openly talk about how we need to scale back our standard of living, and I think that greatly affects people like you and me.
Yeah, well, it sure does, and I have no disagreement with that at all. I think collectivism is a problem. Where you give up your identity to the collective, for sure. And I see it happening at all levels. I see that as a fractal. So I guess maybe where we have a bit of a disagreement maybe is that there's a subclass of human called supervillain or something like that, versus the people that are at the local level doing the exact same thing. That what they're doing is probably not good either. I mean, they're colluding with the guys that have the guns. So if you're a rich guy in a particular city and you got a pal on council, or you're a nonprofit group and you have a lot of influence in the community, you get together, the three of you get together, man, you can do a lot of things in the community. You can expropriate land, you can do this, you can do that, all for the greater good. Now, none of these people think that they're doing anything evil. They all think that they're doing a wonderful job.
I don't think
and
that
most of the people are,
as you referred to them as, I don't think they think they're doing anything wrong either. They think they're creating good. They probably picture themselves as the patrons of humanity. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you said before, no one thinks of themselves as evil.
Right. So okay, great. So we have. I'm not sure we have a disagreement here then, Richard, because I don't disagree with anything you've said. I think that these groups do have influence in the world. I don't think it's good. I guess maybe it's the language or something that doesn't totally resonate with me. It kind of paints this picture of kind of a Dr. Evil type people in shaded rooms.
They are working as a cabal, and they are working against our best interest, which I do, and which is I think, and not only our best interest, but the best interests of the majority of humanity. And I think they are evil. I want to address your point that you said about the people in the city councils. I think evil is really if you want to talk about evil, one has to take into account the scope. Like, okay, so you live in Fort McMurray. Some people are there influencing city council. They're not really going to have that much of an effect on the greater world, and they're not going to take out food out of very much food out of our mouths. They're not going to reconstruct the world in a way that kind of removes our standard of living. The people on the top, that is their stated goal. That is what they want to do.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Well, and I guess I would say that the people at the top in the municipal level, at the local level, they have grand plans for the community. They see a vision of the future.
They're collaborators. They're collaborators
right.
in Agenda 21.
Sure. So yeah, I don't think we're in a disagreement here that the ones at the top certainly have far more influence and create far more destruction than maybe people at the local level. I guess, but this brings up the good point then is, okay, where do we focus our energy? So we see collectivism is bad. Agenda 21, as you put it, is statism 2.0 on a grand scale. We see things at the local level that might be classified as statism 2.0 at a small scale.
Yeah.
What are we to do then, Richard? Where do we focus our energy? What's the best way to bring down Leviathan?
Well, I think it is a good idea to understand and accept that this is a coordinated plan happening through numerous institutions, numerous governments all over the world, and I don't see anything wrong with calling it what it is. Agenda 21.
Do you think that anyone disagrees that it's not a coordinated plan? That there aren't people working towards this together? I mean, even the people in it are saying that they're working together, right? I mean, that's
yeah. Well,
how
that's
it works.
not true though. ICLEI, the International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives, which pushes all this stuff at the local level, denies ties to the UN, even though I sent you an article from a global governance think tank out of Canada where it says local Agenda 21s will be implemented through the local communities. Because they've been getting a lot of heat in the U.S. They deny any. They say, "Oh, Agenda 21, what's that?"
Right.
Or they deny any sort of association with the United Nations.
Yeah, so they play political games, right?
Yeah.
But again, I'm not sure that that's different than any other discrete local entity where, a third party might be getting really unpopular, and it's like, oh, okay, still like what you're doing, but we're not going to have meetings anymore. We're going to, disassociate from you. We can't really be friends anymore. But I kind of like what you're doing still. I mean, that kind of stuff happens at the local level all the time too, right? So isn't that just kind of part of the normal politics of how these groups, how statism works?
Yeah, fair enough. But this is an initiative to create, like I said, global statism. Like I said, if you don't like
Right.
you don't like the nation state or the provincial government, the local government, you're probably really not going to like the world government.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what the architecture is.
Well, hey, listen, again, I'm not arguing that it's bad. Want to stop it, right? We both want to stop it. So I guess what I'm getting at is the question I asked you is, how do we go about do this? What's the best way? And you said, I think you said, make people realize that they're working together in cahoots with each other, right?
Yeah.
But I guess I'm saying that should almost go without saying.
Okay.
Because that's how
enough.
all these things work. I mean, that's how the world works. People are working together. And to me, what the real issue is here is the belief system, how they understand, how they get things done. So if you believe that it's permissible to use force, a special class to use force called government or the state, that group of people is allowed to point guns to get things done, and everyone just accepts it, then that's a real problem. Now, when they go to, when anyone has a great idea how we can improve the community, oh yeah, let's make a law. Let's pull out the guns. Let's point them at people, and we'll feel good about it. And because the gun is kind of hidden, you don't see the gun until further down the line. You don't see the gun until you've been served numerous notices of non-compliance, and until you say, look, it's my property. You can't enter. This is my domain. Well, yeah, we're entering. Well, no, you won't enter. Well, they enter guns drawn. If you try to defend yourself, that you die, right? I mean, that you get killed. So there's a gun there, and that all stems from this belief that government is virtuous and it's a virtuous way of getting things done. So I think to me that the way we attack this is we attack that belief system. Why do you believe this? Why is that good? Because if you have that, then essentially Agenda 21 becomes a manual for how I landscape my backyard.
You know what, I'm not against that. I'm all for promoting the philosophy of liberty. I'm all for pointing out the gun in the room. here's where I think you and I do disagree, or where I disagree with a lot of the anarcho-capitalist philosophers is I think that's not the only thing to do. I don't think not hitting your kids and talking about the ills of statism are the only permissible things to do. I think that we also have to get involved with and interact with the state on some level, and that involves petition, because they have these local meetings where they try and sell people. They apparently use a technique called the Delphi technique, which is like a consensus building technique. So they try to get everyone into these public meetings and get everyone on board and make everyone think that they had input and that they consented to this when they were actually just led to a predetermined conclusion.
I mean, they've been using this technique for years. I remember 15 years ago or so in Grand Prairie here where we're at now. Was I supposed to say that or no?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
No, I'm just looking at 15 years ago is after 1992. It was after...
Well, it was...
Actually, and the Delphi technique was created by the Rand Corporation, I think in the 70s or 80s or something like that. So it's not new.
Well, this is kind of a typical way that they do things. So about 15 years ago, I think the Minister of Health and some people from the professional body of paramedics came around here doing these town hall meetings where they asked people these questions. Do you think that ambulance services are healthcare? Do you think that ambulances provide healthcare? Yeah. Ambulance services provide healthcare. So if it's healthcare, do you think it should be run by Alberta Health?
Yeah.
Well, if Alberta Health looks after healthcare, it should be run by...
Yeah.
So, I mean, they lead you to the conclusion, and cut to a decade later, we now have AHS running ambulances and centralization of that. And, as a paramedic, I can tell you, it's not a good thing.
But I want to get back to how we deal with it. I think we should go in and disrupt the meetings. I'm all for civil disobedience. I think we should just go in and call spade a spade. Don't, I'm sorry, run for office. Get involved in your communities. If there's any, government is illegitimate, I'll get that out of the way now. But if there's one, I say the closer to the community, the lower the level of government, the better. You know what I mean? Right. And I think that we need to get involved in our local communities. We need to engage in civil disobedience. And, I'm sorry, but, there's been states in the United States that have passed legislation that says the government's not allowed to participate. Agenda 21's banned, basically. It's not, as far as I know, it's not saying that you can't be part of an environmental group. It's just that these government involvement in the United Nations Agenda 21 is bad, is banned, and I don't think it goes against the anarchist philosophy for the government to ban the government to do anything. You know what I mean?
No.
And also, I want to bring up this quote. This is Edward Bernays. Are you familiar with him?
No.
Edward Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew and the father of public relations. He wrote a book called Propaganda, and in this book, this is a telling quote. I actually use it in the introduction to my film. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes are formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Now, and this is Edward Bernays.
And the socialists would tell you that that's the capitalist pigs. I mean, that's the marketing. That's everything else, right?
Well, whoever it is, I'm saying that there's social engineers. Also, who steers the opinions and the beliefs of the masses? You look at the education. Well, I'm sorry, but the education system as we have it now was largely put together or influenced by the big foundations. In the States, the Rockefeller Foundation created the General Education Board to kind of centralize and deal with education. I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of everything they covered, but I know the Rockefeller Foundation from researching for my film. They did fund collectivist initiatives. They basically pushed, they funded the National Education Association and National Education Association, and there's another one, Progressive Education Association, and which basically promoted a collectivist top-down point of view in the schools.
Sure.
Now, also, you have to understand, these foundations are funding environmental groups. They have a huge influence on society. And to say that everything just boils down to just the state, I think is missing at least a little bit of the big picture.
Sure. Well, you know, I can tell you as an entrepreneur, if I'm in a position to get a juicy contract from the state, it's kind of almost my responsibility to do that to my shareholders, right? So, you know, if I'm sitting in Rockefeller's shoes and I'm seeing all these opportunities because I'm such a rich guy, I've done so well for myself that all these opportunities are coming, I kind of think that I might actually grasp at some of these opportunities. Now, I'm not, obviously that's contributing to the harmfulness or whatever, the ill effect of the world. But I kind of feel like every time I drive on a road that's paid for by taxpayers, or I go to the hospital that's paid for by taxpayers, or I go do my job, which by the way is paid by the taxpayers, I'm kind of being parasitical on those around me. So aren't I kind of doing the same thing that the Rockefellers are doing?
You're not actively trying to promote a collectivist philosophy.
Right.
Even Murray Rothbard,
they're not actively promoting a collectivist philosophy.
But you're not promoting it, trying to indoctrinate children in the public schools.
Right. Now, I'm going to agree with you here, and I think you hit on a great point of you know, a lot of times as anarchists, as liberty lovers, we put ourselves in this box and we say, this is the best way to advance liberty. Don't spank your kids, or civil disobedience. You got to get out there and you've got to pull out the button.
I'm all about it all.
And I totally agree with you. I think that we need people everywhere. I think wherever you're at in life, you start there and then go everywhere with it. And so I've got no problem with, for example, I've been thinking about this lately. I've got no problem with an anarchist politician, a guy in office who has the same core beliefs that we do, that his philosophy is in tune with reality. I have no problem with him being in government. Now, he's going to have to probably do some things in there that he might not like. I mean, you know, I would have preferred there be anarchists in the Nazi Party, for example. Now, you know, people in Germany might, you know, there might have been people who didn't really have a choice. It's either live and join the Nazi Party or die and take your chances on the fringes, right? Okay, I'm here. I'm going in the Nazi Party. Maybe there'd be less damage done. Maybe you could spread some philosophy.
One person might, if there's someone who sets the principles we do, you might have one less death.
Right.
And you may not see a big, I think there's a thing in the anarcho-capitalist movement. There was well, they kind of wear blinders and they don't see the positive that you can possibly do. But you know what? To that one person who didn't die, you changed the fucking world.
Right. And I normally preach to my friends and to everyone who will listen to me, don't vote. It's a waste of time. But you know what? I'm not sure I think that voting is necessary. I don't think it's necessarily immoral. But I don't necessarily think it's a waste of time either if you have a friend or someone you know who espouses this philosophy to you. Yeah, he's not going to go in there. You know, if you elect a Ron Paul to government, they're not going to dissolve the government.
No.
It's just not possible. But it's not a bad thing to have a guy in office that's doing that.
Speaking truth
just
to power,
like it's not a bad thing to have firefighters that are anarchists. It's not a bad thing to have parents who are anarchists, to have, you know, whatever is your skill set, whatever you're able to contribute, wherever you're at in life is within the statist matrix anyways. So, you know, why not, you know?
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I also want to say Murray Rothbard, he talked about the role that the elite played, and because he's done a lot of historical research, and a couple of his lectures, he talks about how, well, they got this guy, how the ruling elite, they'll get one guy elected, and who's basically just their pawn. I forget the president he was using as an example, but he was basically a Morgan guy, and he was completely laissez-faire in the economy, except for the railroads. And in the railroads, he was a complete statist. Well, it turns out that he was a statist in the railroads because the Morgans. He was a Morgan guy. He was basically controlled by bought and paid for by the Morgans, and he was using his position as president to kind of enrich them. Right. So I really think that I think the way I look at it is I think the ruling elite control the levers of the state. I don't think the state controls them. I think they are pretty much the people who are in the driver's seat, and that...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I think. These people are in the driver's seat of the state and of statism, and that they're not sucking up to the politicians. The politicians are sucking up to them to get elected, right, so they can have a little bit of power themselves.
Okay, well, I somewhat agree with you, but I think what came first was the state, and then came the ruling elite's control over the state, right? Would you be fair to say? Like, think of the American Revolution. Was that controlled by the ruling elite or by the common man who wanted freedom, who believed in didn't want to be under tyranny anymore?
I think, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, the American Revolution was a Freemason plot, but I don't see the evidence for that.
Oh, okay.
I think it was a genuine rebellion. I think somewhat it was. I think a lot of it was the founding fathers protecting their own interests,
right?
Because they're like, well, you know, we could be the president, but you know what? They didn't create a monarchy. They could have, because
right.
was that famous line, some lady asked George Washington, what kind of government, do we have a king? He's like, no ma'am, republic if you can keep it.
Right.
And so these people weren't, so they weren't saints, but I don't know if they weren't power hungry madmen either, because right. If they were, they would have created some sort of totalitarian.
So would you agree with this statement then, Richard, that regardless of which came first, the statists or the corporatists, that right now we have people profiting from the belief in the state?
No, sure. But I want to get back to what we were talking about, because you have to understand, like, a lot of the people a lot of the ruling classes, I think, did come from Europe to the United States, to North America, to control. Like, I think... Oh. I think there was honestly, I think they saw 1776 as a threat to their power. So they're like, well, we better get in here and kind of get our stake in this new kind of country, or right. else there could be another ruling class that will sure. overtake us. And that's why you see the merging of the English and American ruling class in what Carol Quigley refers to as the Anglo-American establishment.
And do you think it might have looked something like this? All right, we have this group of people who believe that in the use of force, we have a government formed. There's the group of guys that are controlling all the guns. Let's go suck up to them, throw some money their way, and see if we can't create a land of milk and honey for ourselves.
Oh, I think it was more like they wanted a stake in the new world, and because you have to understand, after the American Revolution, the federal government was very, very small, and you know, most people didn't even affect their lives, you know what I mean, on a real level, because it was so small. It took a while for it anyways to get to the point where it was, you know, an actual presence in people's lives.
Right.
But yeah, I think that they to finish my thought, I think that they basically, the ruling class in Europe was like, they needed to get in there, because if they didn't, they might somehow
someone else was going to seize the opportunity,
someone else
right?
was going to seize the opportunity, or just something was going to happen to threaten their interests.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's true. I think once you have a group of people that have a particular belief system and people are going to be able to profit from that, then you create a demand for that type of service.
Well, the thing is, the Constitution was fairly limited. Like, I'm not going to pretend that the post Civil War America, or post 1776 America, was some sort of bastion of place of liberty, but the Constitution did fairly limit, state. If you read what the actual Constitution says, was fairly limiting to government, right? It was supposed to, didn't work.
But people that get things done in the world know that those pieces of paper don't really mean anything anyways, right?
I'm not saying it was,
I mean,
but I'm saying,
that's for the common man. The common man thinks that that's a magic paper that protects him, but
I'm not arguing.
But people who are in government and in the ruling class and running those cocktail parties, they get things done like this. Hey, Joe, how's it going? Let's get this done, right?
They were hampered a little bit in that by the Constitution. And like I said, constitutions don't stop bullets. They're not magic pieces of paper, but at the same time, they take a little while to get around. Like, to quote Henry Kissinger, he said, "Illegal we do right away. Unconstitutional takes us a little time."
Right.
And I think that's the power of the Constitution, of a Constitution, is it'll slow down the ruling elite, slow down the ruling classes from pillaging, but it's not going to stop them.
All right, cool. So I think we have talked this out. I think that we don't even have a disagreement. I don't think, do we? Do we still have a disagreement anywhere?
No, I think that, like I said, my only disagreement is I think the ruling class controls the state and uses their minions as the how you say the newspaper at the bottom of the birdcage to kind of, you know, get crapped on when they do unpopular things, and then they bring a new one in.
Do you think the ruling class controlled Ron Paul, for example?
No, of course not.
Right.
Look at the media. Look at the media. The ruling class controls the media, and almost everyone in the media, well, not everyone, but there was a very strong consensus in the media against him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can definitely see your point there. Yeah, I don't think I disagree with that. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'd couch it in those terms that they necessarily control it, but they definitely influence strongly. Like, I think the only reason they can control it is because of the belief of the people in a constituency that government is virtuous and that we should have a popularity contest, and the people that win the popularity contest get to control the force. Then of course everyone's going to look at those people and try to influence them. And I think when you have $1 billion or so, it's pretty damn easy to influence those guys, because a lot of those guys don't come, well, some of them do come from billionaire backgrounds, I guess. But I see your point there. I won't disagree with you on that one. I think you're probably right. And you know, it's certainly, I guess my point would be that you can either focus on the rich guys or you can focus on the idea of the state. And to me, it's probably a little bit more fruitful, at least for me, to focus on the belief systems that create the state.
I think
because
that's a very,
if you remove that, then the ruling class has nothing to control.
I think you're right, but I think at the same time we have to, I think, focus on what is going on in our daily lives, in the arena of the state. It also can if you point out how the state and how Agenda 21 and all these things are really like a train coming down, bearing down at people, you can kind of, I don't know, wake them up, kind of get them to look at things critically in a way to say, well, you know, this isn't that great. Maybe we should re-examine things. You know, I came into this from the quote-unquote conspiracy theory, from you know, the idea of analyzing the ruling elite and how everything that the media, well, not everything, but a lot of what the media is telling us is, well, biased and quite frankly mostly lies.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a great way to end it there, Richard, because I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. You know, I attack this problem from kind of base principles, philosophical, get your belief systems in order. But you were absolutely right. You know, I was convinced into this movement by a lot of the pragmatic arguments I heard, the things that government was doing that I didn't agree with. And once I went down the rabbit hole and found these, you know, the philosophy couching this was in error, then pretty soon a whole big world opened up to me. So I think I'd like to thank you for coming on the Fort Mac Philosopher. It's not easy to get guests when you're starting up as a podcaster, and thank you for being generous with your time. And I thank you for the work you're doing to expose a lot of these things that are going on out there. And you're attracting a lot of attention. You're getting people's attention, and I think, and bringing them into the liberty movement. I think that's a good thing, and it proves the point that wherever you're at, start there and go everywhere. And you came at it from a particular spot in life, different than me, and you're going where you're going, and I'm going where I'm going. I think that's fantastic. Do you have any last words?
No, I just hope that we can all work together and kind of block this totalitarian agenda, however we do it, because at the end of the day, there's some bad stuff that is coming down the turnpike. There is a black cloud overhead, and we could be in a lot of trouble if we don't actually deal with it. Awesome. Well, folks, thanks for joining the Fort Mac Philosopher. I'm going to get a bunch of information and clips and links from Richard, and I'm going to post them right down here, so make sure you check them out. This is Tim Moen with the Fort Mac Philosopher. Catch you later.
Philosophers never made any money saving the world from shady belief systems. Sometimes I despair the world will never see another age of enlightenment. Now it's time for the Fort Mac Philosopher Show.